Hey everyone, Jeep here to count down the 10 best games for learning Korean. I've been curating a list of over 100 Korean games for the last few years. My curator page categorizes games for beginner, intermediate, and advanced learners, and even has a separate list for free games. Links to the Korean Games for Learners page and each of the top 10 games are all in the description, so let's get straight into it. So my number 10 game is LAPIN, which is a really cute game about some bunnies who are exploring outside of their warren. And it's interesting, like all the characters in the game have a different style of speaking and have just a lot of personality. They all talk to each other and you can get a sense of how they relate to each other through the way the Korean dialogue is written. And the main character in the game also will look at the scenery and describe it in very colorful detail. So this is a great game that just has a lot of detail, a lot of really interesting vocabulary, and a lot of really nice conversations. My number 9 game is Bed Survival, and this game is really depressing actually, but it's also really funny. It has a lot of jokes sprinkled in, very Korean style humor with lots of memes and internet culture, lots of slang and all kinds of jargon and references. It's really interesting for learning Korean types of jokes. And basically the main character is stuck in bed or doesn't want to leave bed, and she has a lot of monologues where she's talking to herself or talking to sort of imaginary characters in her head. And she does have a part where she calls one of her friends and they have a really interesting, like very deep philosophical conversation where they talk to each other. I think this is a really great game for learning some advanced expressions and just kind of advanced ideas of how you can use humor in Korean. Number 8 is Tasty Love, which is a pretty standard visual novel. In Korean, they would call it a myeonsi, which means 미소년 연애 simulation, which just means like beautiful woman girlfriend simulator. But anyway, this game has just some really nice natural dialogue, and it takes you to some very natural settings of being in a coffee shop. And so it actually uses a lot of like very basic vocabulary that would have to do with like ordering coffee and making coffee and using the ingredients, not just coffee, but various types of drinks that you would get at that type of shop. And just as a standard dating simulation, it allows you to interact with the girls and you get to learn about them and their personalities. And yeah, it's just a very nice, simple game that you can learn from. Number 7 is also a visual novel called Some Convenience Store, but it has some additional like management features, like sort of a layer where you build up your business and buy upgrades for your business and things like that. But in terms of the story, it is, again, just kind of interacting with the different women around you, and it's cool. It has some nice dialogue, some good jokes, very lighthearted and simple, and uses a lot of very basic terms from daily life and things that you would kind of expect. But one of the really nice features about this is it does have full voice acting for all the women that you talk to, and so you can get some listening practice from this game. It's also very high budget. The acting is very good, and it's well written. Number 6 is kind of a weird game. It's a horror themed game, but it's not really super scary. It does have a few spooky moments, but basically the character is trapped inside a haunted mansion, doesn't exactly understand why. And there's other characters who are trapped in that haunted mansion with them, and they're all trying to escape. And it has a lot of dialogue, like a lot of dialogue. And the characters kind of endlessly will talk to each other and try to solve this situation and they're sort of suspicious of each other. They're trying to feel each other out in terms of their motivations and personalities. And I just find that it uses a lot of repeated words. Like you'll see the same words and phrases over and over because they kind of keep digging into the same issues and topics. And just that level of repetition I find was really useful for studying when I first played this game. My number 5 game is Hoyeonjigi, which is a really weird point-and-click adventure game where you're trying to bring a flower to Buddha, It's very rooted in kind of Buddhism and has a lot of Korean culture, especially in the visuals and in the way that characters speak in the game. They have very like strange accents or kind of quirks or tics in the way that they talk that make it somewhat difficult to read, but it's also like really interesting. And I don't know, it's just a very interesting way to see how some of the Korean culture bleeds into the game. And yeah, it's just a really fascinating game. It's also very cute and like hilarious. There's a lot of really good jokes and there's really good music and things like that. It's just a really enjoyable, cute game. Number 4 is Flowers Blooming at the End of Summer, and this game is really intense. It is a visual novel game, but it's more from the perspective of somebody looking back at their past memories and using like a very, very poetic narrative style, and it uses a lot of like very complicated, very descriptive words. And it's interesting. It has voice acting for the girlfriend character. And the visuals in this game are just like completely out of this world, like nothing I've ever seen in a visual novel. It's using like this very like almost movie-like animated style. And it's just, I don't know, just a very intense, like kind of complete experience where you get a sense of like everything that they're trying to say and the way that they're trying to express their emotions. Very, very interesting game. Number 3 is also a visual novel game. It's Suhoshin, but this one is not a dating game, at least not really. This one's set in a historical Korean period about a couple hundred years ago. And the graphics are just amazing. It really paints like beautiful pictures of the ancient Korean countryside and uses very traditional clothing. It also uses a very traditional style of speaking, like a very, very older style of speaking, very formal style. And so it's kind of a period piece thing. And I think if you're interested in that type of culture or that type of like language style, want to get a sense of how that works, this is a really great game. And one of the coolest features about this game is it uses, because it has an older style, it uses some archaic words and there's some sort of very old archaic objects that you interact with in the game. And it actually highlights those and provides a special dictionary that allows you to understand the meaning of those much older style words or those much older style cultural artifacts. And that dictionary, like I think it's intended for Korean readers as well, but for someone like me who doesn't even really know what it's talking about, it's so helpful and such a useful, interesting feature. My number 2 game is My So-Called Future Girlfriend, and you can tell from the title, this is yet another visual novel, it's yet another dating simulation game, but this one has a very, very weird story. It's a time travel game where one of the characters repeatedly goes back to the past, and because of that, you actually get to see the same story beats multiple times, and each time a lot of similar things happen and then like slight variations or different things happen. And so I found this really interesting as a study tool because the first time through, when you're still learning some of the vocabulary and looking things up, you're kind of learning those things, and then when you go back to the past and see those events again, it sort of reinforces the things that you just learned, and you get a sort of another chance to understand what those words and phrases mean, and also see how they change and see how the situation and sort of the mood of those scenes changes the meaning of the words. It's a really, really interesting game. It has pretty good voice acting for the female character, and yeah, just overall, just such a strong, interesting story that it can really suck you into it and just make you like very invested in the outcome of the story. Before I move on to number 1, I just want to mention that you can't learn Korean just from playing games. They're fun supplemental material, especially if you already enjoy games and visual novels, but it takes a lot more study and practice to learn. I did a separate presentation on language learning advice, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. So top of the list, number 1 is Discouraged Workers, which is a really heavy visual novel. I have to give a content warning. It has depression and suicide and sex and other adult themes, but that's actually one of the reasons I recommend it. It touches on a lot of subjects and vocabulary that you really don't see in other games. The other thing about it is it does have dialogue, and the characters do talk to each other in a very natural style, very long form conversation style, but also the narration is extremely detailed and long. It goes through kind of a very wordy, almost excruciating detail of every single action that every character does in like the most minute, like very specific way that I found just like so fascinating, but also I learned a lot of vocabulary from. Just the way that it describes how characters move and do things and pick up things, and it's almost too much, but it's just such a great study tool for learning about natural situations. And the game takes place in just modern day Korea. It does have a lot of Korean culture in it in terms of how the character lives, and so you do get a sense of those things as well. And to top it all off, there is a scene in the game where the character goes for a formal job interview, and basically the entire job interview where the character, answers questions and talks about their work experience and all of those things, like things that you might actually really need in terms of Korean vocabulary, it's all there. So yeah, I very strongly recommend this game if you're okay with the adult content that comes with it. That's it for now. Let me know what games I missed in the comments. I still have a backlog of over 100 more Korean games that I haven't tried yet, so this is just a top 10 for the ones that I've reviewed so far. Subscribe to my Korean Games for Learning page on Steam to see more new games as I review them. I mostly do Korean Let's Play videos on this YouTube channel, but I also occasionally do English educational content. So if that sounds cool to you, obliterate that subscribe button, or gently smoosh the like button. Or, if this was a total waste of your time, please give me a thumbs down so I know how you really feel. Either way, totally fine with me. See you next time. Bye!